are going to continue what we spoke about yesterday. Yesterday, what did we speak about? What happens if you are trying to cook, just a quick recap because these are complicated halachas, you cooked park pasta in a meaty pot.
24 hours after.
Yes. So if 24 hours your meaty pot wasn't used and you cooked spaghetti in there, then once you take the spaghetti out of that meaty pot, you can put cheese on it. Okay? Does that make sense? That's what we spoke about yesterday. As long as that meaty pot has not been used for meat, or has not been used for 24 hours at all. Okay, another halacha we spoke out is that if you have eaten meat, are you allowed to eat a part of food that has been cooked in a dairy pot, or do you need to wait for that?
Yeah. That's fine.
If it's cold.
That's fine.
Oh.
If it, what?
If it's cold only, no?
It's been cooked in a dairy pot. Cooking
Oh,
normally.
part of it is dairy.
Part of it in a dairy
I
pot.
see it.
Okay. Now, if the food is bland, not sharp, then you can eat it straight away, and there's no reason to wait. Okay? That's the halacha. So therefore, if you, in theory, go to a dairy restaurant after you have eaten meat, if you find something on a menu that is entirely parve, that doesn't have any like onions in there, so generally savory food is a bit complicated because there's normally onions in there, something like that. So then, that's already a problem. But if you get a pastry that's being baked in a dairy oven, so you can have that immediately after eating meat. It's not a problem. Okay? That is what we had spoken about yesterday.
Wait,
okay.
so I can go to a fancy steakhouse steak and go to Dairy Baker's across the street. The baker has to have no cheese in it.
Right. So you get a baked
It's listed dairy.
You get a croissant in the bakery afterwards.
It's listed dairy.
That is parve, but it is baked in a dairy oven.
Ah, I see. It has to be listed parve.
Yeah?
Never mind.
You understand that?
Usually things in a milchik bakery are really listed as parve.
They do have a certain section that can be parve.
They have a section that is dairy and a section that is, parve normally. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you can just buy something that's parve, it's not a problem at all. Okay. That is basically what you need to know about those halachas.
Does this shiva hold by,
We hold by the high standards.
No. By would the yeshiva hold rabbinut? Let's say there's a milchik bakery, no fleischig.
No, if we would have that food here.
Rabbinut.
If we would serve that here.
No, not served. I have a sheet and it says rabbinut. You shouldn't eat rabbinut if it's meat or chicken or something like that.
So dairy you can.
Dairy you can. It's okay.
I mean, this is a list they're giving out to students.
I just feel like things that are listed as kosher, even to a high hechsher in America, with the cheap labor that America usually uses, or like people that don't really, the Mashiachs aren't really good or whatever. Things that are actually listed in America as kosher, if they had a Mashiach or if they had some sort of inspection. And if it was an Eretz Yisrael, it would be deemed as non-kosher.
I heard people say that before.
That the same standard in America would be considered here non-kosher?
I just feel like
I heard some people say because
in America we have so much cheap labor. Like,
have I ever given you my presentation on Hechsherim in general? Did I ever go through it?
At the very beginning.
That's
how we started.
With the presentation.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
That was different group of people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So Hechsherim is a whole different topic. Hechsherim is a completely different topic. That could be a little complicated, and also you need an understanding why certain Hechsherim are higher level. What does it mean that Hechsher is a higher level?
How is Beit Yosef higher for Sephardi and lower for Ashkenazi?
Well, because they may cater for certain Sephardi customs, and not for certain Ashkenazi customs.
Like Pesach.
Like halachic customs.
Pesach is a good example.
Pesach.
Okay. So there are different halachas, different customs, different halachas. So normally speaking, any of those hechsherim will cater for all the holy Yidden. The Sephardi hechsher will normally have everything acceptable for Ashkenazi Jews, and any Ashkenazi hechsher will also be sufficient for the Sephardi ones. Normally speaking. Pardon?
I'm saying money's money, so if you call them up saying
what?
I'm saying money's money, so if you call them up saying I'm Ashkenazi, you probably say yes.
Right. No, but they'll deal with it. They'll make sure.
Yeah, because in Aish Yeshiva, it says for meat or chicken, Beis Yosef is not recommended. Beis Yosef is not recommended.
Right.
I'm guessing because the majority of people here are Ashkenazim.
Yeah. But again, it's these are different levels of hechsherim. I mean, a lot of that has to be, worked out personally where you are at, what your level of observance is, and that's very much of an individual thing. It's kind of hard to give out a list. That's what I'm trying to say. But there is a list, but everyone is still individual. Someone who's just new to keeping kosher, we're not going to tell him to only rely on him with stringent hechsher. That just doesn't make any sense, because in theory the more lenient hechsher are also kosher. They may not have all the stringencies, may not be as reliable, but it's okay. But someone who is maybe, has more experience with keeping kosher, or so then a better hechsher, maybe a different hechsher may be more suitable for him. So it's a very, very individual thing. That's really what it boils down to. That's a very different conversation.
What would you say is a higher standard, the Rabbanut in Israel's hechsher, the U?
The OU.
The States, yeah.
I think the OU is a higher.
Really?
But that's
it's
because
a very high level. OU is excellent.
But he's also really hard because you got so many more rules with fruit and vegetables and everything.
Here you have other rules of fruit and vegetables.
Yeah, in America you
Making
can
it more
eat fruit fish
complicated
everywhere.
because trumas and masras. That makes it more complicated. True. But OU is definitely a high standard. It doesn't mean, a rabbanut, it doesn't mean you have to understand, guys, when you have a hechsher that in theory is maybe a lower level hechsher, it's not because they didn't get their act together, it's not because they're bad people, it's nothing to do with that, it's just because if I would be in the shoes of the chief rabbi of Israel, I would have a completely different motive. My motive would be, let's try and get kosher food available to as many possible Jews in Israel. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's a beautiful thing. Because that means basically that any person, even secular people, as soon as they walk out their doorstep, any supermarket, it will be kosher at a basic standard. I think that's a beautiful motive. And to be able to get that done, you'll have to rely on certain leniencies. Otherwise, you're going to have a handful of products that are kosher. So that explains the mindset maybe of it's not a lower level hechsher. It's not because some people misunderstand. It's not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's beautiful. That means that anyone who's even secular, basically after 120 years on this planet, they'll go to the next world and they have eaten kosher. Most of the food they ate is kosher. It's beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. That's a great thing. But that means that in order to get there, they may have to rely on certain leniencies, which is good for that goal. But the question now is that then the hechsher that you and I would rely on or not? So that's already a different conversation. Do you understand what I'm saying? But it could be viewed as a very beautiful thing. That's the truth. That's really
the high hechshers they can be very expensive to pay.
Expensive for sure. That's what I'm saying. Go to certain hechsherim are very expensive because they rely on they wouldn't rely on any leniencies. It's very stringent and makes it more expensive and harder to get to, and much fewer products are going to be kosher. Restaurants and eateries, it's going to be much fewer restaurants and eateries that are going to be able to have certification. So if that was the hechsher we had in Israel only, then that means that it would be kind of hard to get kosher food. So anyone who's very committed to keeping kosher would be able to get kosher food. Great, it'll be keeping kosher in a very high standard. But what about our other holy brothers and sisters who are living here? And we have to think about them too. So I'm saying that's really I'm not talking about Rabbanut, I'm not saying any typical hechsher, I'm not saying about anything. I mean, but any hechsher that may typically be at a lower level hechsher, so that may be what they're trying to achieve. That's what I'm saying. Now, you do have hechsherim where the implementation is bad. There could be sometimes that the policy of a hechsher could be very high level, but maybe their implementation is bad, they have bad systems, their mashgichim, it's badly organized. Unfortunately, that also happens. And that gives a bad reputation to a certain hechsher. Now, these things happen. Running a kashrut organization is very complicated. Very, very complicated. Okay? So and don't forget, there's a big business thing involved also. If you open an eatery, you want to make sure that you get many customers. Okay? So to be able to write kosher on your restaurant, that's a big thing for you, because that means that your restaurant now becomes available to so many people. So that's just a bit what goes into hechsherim. But the general thing is that even hechsherim that are known to be at a lower level, that doesn't mean they're bad. It means that they have a different goal over here. Their goal is to spread kashrut to so many people, and that's a beautiful thing. You just have to know at your level what hechsher to rely on. That's a different conversation. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Let's move forward a little bit. So we spoke about waiting time. We spoke about foods that have been cooked in a meaty pot, dairy foods, or par foods in a meaty pot, par foods in a dairy pot after eating meat. We spoke that all out. Now I'd like to speak about further separations between meat and dairy, because besides the waiting time, between milk and meat, Chazal also established guidelines regarding the use of utensils. Okay, utensils that have been used for dairy or meat. Besides utensils, also foods that have been on one table and using for the other type of food. So we're going to be speaking about different things. We're going to be speaking about knives that are used for the opposite type of food, how to deal with that. We're going to be speaking about tablecloths. Do you need 2 tablecloths? Is that a must? Do you need to have a tablecloth for dairy and one for meat? So these are things that we need to think about. These are further separations of meat and dairy, very practical. And then we're going to be speaking about what happens when you have a leftover food. Let's say you had on Shabbos morning, you had a huge meal, you had a lot of guests over, and you have a few salads that are left. So your Shabbos morning meal was meaty, and now you want to use it for Sunday night dinner. It's still left, you put it in the fridge, and your Sunday night dinner, you have a lasagna, but you want to have a little fresh salad with it that was used for your meat meal. Can you use that? Salad is part, it's being used for a meaty meal. So that type of thing. What about bread? Challah that was left over from Shabbos, so you put it in a bag to try and retain its freshness, and you want to use it Motzei Shabbos. You want to use it for your Mlava Malka. That's the special meal we have after Shabbos goes out.
Put cheese and lox.
And put cheese and lox on it. Could you do that or not? So
I've done
these
it.
are what?
I have no idea, but I've done it.
So I'm saying these are halachas that a lot of people don't think about, but they have clear guidelines. Okay. Let's first speak about the knife. Okay. So if you cut cheese with a meaty knife. Okay, so you have cheese, a block of cheese, okay, and you take, by mistake, a meaty knife, and you try to cut some pieces from it. Now, we're talking about the knife being cold, the knife being entirely clean. We're not talking about a dirty, meaty grease knife, but it's clean and it's cold, okay? Or, the opposite case, you're cutting your meat. You start cutting your meat Erev Shabbos, you cooked a nice piece of meat, and now you want to cut it in slices. That's what you want to do. So you use a dairy knife for that. Okay? Now again, the meat was already cooled off, it's completely cold. So what's the halacha? So the halacha is that you must remove the surface layer of the food that came into contact with the knife. Okay? That's what you're gonna do. Okay? So if you cut a piece of meat, you started cutting your meat, first slice, and then suddenly you see that you didn't use the red knife. For meat, a lot of people use red for meat, and you use your blue knife. That's an easy way generally that people like to differentiate, so use your blue knife. So that's a problem. So what you do then is you put that knife away, you wash it well, that's all you need to do. And then you use your red knife and slice a little of the surface layer off, and you throw that out, okay? That's because the knife has a special nature that even if it's clean, but because you're pushing hard with it, there is a concern that there will be taste transfers even when it is cold, okay? So that's a problem with a knife, okay? Therefore a knife, even if it's cold, so until then we spoke out that cold use, everything is fine because there's no taste transfer of blios, absorbed food particles when something is cold. I'm telling you the knife is a little different. If you start using a knife that is meaty and slicing your cheese, or you're cutting your meat and you're using a dairy knife, so you'll have to slice off the surface area, okay? That's what you have to do. Great, so that's just one thing. And the same applies if you cut bread with a meaty knife and you plan to eat a dairy meal. Or think about the reverse. Just imagine you're having a lot of guests and on Shabbos, Friday night, and you want to cut some more challah, so you just go to the kitchen quickly and you cut your challah for hamotzi already, you gave everyone a piece, and then in the kitchen you had another challah, you decide to start cutting it. So you start cutting with a dairy knife. And you're going to bring that challah to the table, which is meaty meal. Then again, you have to slice off the surface of that. Now that's obviously doable if you notice that after the first slice, but if you notice this after you slice the entire challah, so that's going to be challenging. It may not be possible anymore at that point. You may be better off putting the challah in a bag or something like that and save it for a dairy meal or something like that. But that's important that if you cut anything with a dairy knife, so you won't be able to use that challah anymore for a meat meal. Okay, that's important. Great, that's important. That's regarding the knife. Is that clear, guys?
So if I have challah, Friday, Saturday, challah, use it the meal and I have extra. If I then cut it with a dairy knife, that whole challah becomes.
What do you mean? You have challah?
I have leftover challah from Saturday, and I want to use it Saturday night. If I cut it with a dairy knife,
Yeah.
then the whole challah becomes dairy.
It wasn't cut already on the table or not?
I mean, let's say you have three challahs. Let's say you have two challahs and you just cut one.
Okay, so which one are you cutting now with the dairy knife?
You
cut it all the challah with the dairy knife, whatever it is, whatever you cut with the dairy knife.
I have a half challah.
So great, you have a half challah left. So if you start slicing with the dairy knife,
Oh.
so you have to. Well, in theory it becomes dairy, but what you could do is you can just
do it
slice
with
the
a
surface.
slice. Yeah.
Slice up a small.
You could
slice
be
of
like
that.
this slices for milk, this slices for meat,
Also,
this
you
slices
can-
for milk.
Have two knives.
Yeah.
So if I use a dairy knife-
Your head spitting in the knife.
And I cut the dairy knife, just that piece can become dairy, not the whole challah.
That's right.
That's with the whole challah, not even.
And the edge of
Say
the
whole
whole
challah.
The
yeah,
edge is scraped off the side.
Just whatever
That's what you're
touched
saying.
the knife.
Whatever got touched with the knife that needs to be scraped off. Okay? Make sense? Okay, let's speak for a moment about tablecloths. Okay, do you need to have two tablecloths? Okay, so the custom is a lot of people do have multiple tablecloths. They have one for meat and one for dairy. But like, let's just speak about this. Like, just imagine you're designing your own apartment now, and you can't afford just buying everything double. Listen, I'm saying, and you know, if you want to have an easier time with halachot, you can. The contrast is my parents' kitchen and my in-laws' kitchen is very different. My parents, they have one stove, one oven, and whatever, and one sink. My in-laws, they have two sinks, two stoves, two ovens, and whatever.
Milk and flesh
Microwave.
inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Popular guy.
Well, it's only if different people call me, maybe the same. In any case, is that a requirement? Oh, I remember now. This is ridiculous.
It must be important if you want to answer.
No.
It must be urgent. You should take it.
I think it's okay. In any case, so what's the halach with the tablecloths? Do you really need to buy multiple tablecloths? So I'm saying, like, you know, if you really want to go for it, go buy multiple tablecloths. But if you're moving into your own apartment and it's like, hey, I want to go slowly, I can't afford this all, is one enough or not? So I'll tell you, the halacha is that it says in Shulchan Aruch that one should not eat dairy of a meat tablecloth and vice versa. That means if you have a tablecloth that's meaty, you shouldn't be eating dairy on that same tablecloth. And the same thing, if you have a dairy tablecloth, you should not be having meat according on that tablecloth. However, let me explain that if it is a cloth, tablecloth, I mean, not plastic, what I mean to say, so that you can wash it in between. What I mean to say is that in theory, there's no need to go buy another tablecloth. You could just, after your dairy meal, you can throw it in the washing machine, and you can use that for meat afterwards.
No, but that takes such a long time.
Can you disinfect it?
So
Is that-
annoying. No, if you use a plastic, but if you use a plastic tablecloth, you can just
So-
rip it off and put a brand new product.
Yeah.
No, so if it's you know those thick plastic tablecloths, a lot of
Yeah.
people have those
On
like
top of
That's
the
reusable.
practical.
Yeah.
So that, in theory, you can just wipe clean. So if you wipe that clean, in theory, and it's really clean, so then the halacha is that even if you ate meat on that before, if you clean it well, you can eat dairy of it afterwards.
And what about a glass table? That's very easy to clean with a sponge or something.
If you clean it well, it's the same halacha.
But what's with the whole business about not being able to cush glass or plastic? Like if you use a glass.
But you're not putting the food on the glass, are you?
Well, like I don't know, if you have a meaty glass plate or something.
Oh, that's a different thing. Your glass, you can't cush a glass, that's right.
Put in the microwave.
Oh, okay.
Sephardim can, but Ashkenazim can't.
So you can't kosher
Sephardim don't
glass.
really need to kush a glass
You
because
can't.
glass
You can't have a
doesn't
glass
become
table.
vegetable.
Sorry, in between.
So you just can't eat
You,
off
you
it.
said that you can have a glass table.
Yeah, because you're not eating off it.
You don't put the
using it
food
as
straight
utensils.
on your
What
table,
if
right?
something
Most
drops
people
on the
don't.
table?
Don't eat it.
If it's hot, then don't eat it. If it's like just if your table is clean and it's not warm, if it's cold, then you can take it off the table and eat it because it doesn't absorb anything. Again, the tablecloth is going to be clean. So let me just clarify a second. Is that if you have a tablecloth that's made out of material, it's cloth, then in theory what you could do is you can wash them in between meat and dairy. You can do that, okay? Now, as you said, it takes a long time. It's not always practical, so you may be better off having one for meat and one for dairy. And let me tell you, that's the common custom in most homes. They'll have their tablecloths for meat and they'll have their tablecloths for dairy. But I'm saying that is the ideal, and it's the easiest, avoids confusion, etc., etc. You recognize, you know, this is my dairy tablecloth, this is my meat tablecloth, and with a plastic, we're saying a plastic tablecloth, in theory, if it's like a reusable one, you can clean it off and use it afterwards for dairy or for meat, whatever, that's okay. So I'm saying, like, what I mean to say is over here is that I want to give you over a well-balanced halacha. Yes, if you ask me what is the common custom, most people, they will have multiple tablecloths for different types of food. They have one for dairy, one for meat. But if that for some reason doesn't work for you, or you're just not ready to spend money on that, I'm telling you that this is a perfectly acceptable halacha, and that's fine. Okay? That's what we're trying to say. That is what you gotta know. Okay, let's go through some other halachas. Okay, let's speak about a salt shaker for a moment. Okay, salt shakers. So they're brought down in halacha, but today a salt shaker, we have something that has little holes in there, and you go like that, or you have the ones that you actually grind in the salt grinders. In the olden days, the salt shakers would be different. They would have a salt thing that you actually dip the food in. In fact, a lot of people still have that for challah. When they cut challah, you may have seen that. They'll just dip the challah in a little thing. So I'm saying, but we'll use that for challah. Generally, we don't use that. We don't really dip our food into meat. Generally not. Dip the food into the salt, I'm saying. If you do have something like that, it's important to have a separate one for meat and dairy, it says, because a lot of times food residue just comes in the salt and it gets mixed in with meat, meaty stuff, grease, whatever it is, and therefore dairy. To be honest, it doesn't sound very good. I don't think it's the most hygienic way of using your salt anyway, but I'm saying if you have such a salt thing, then it's ideal to have one for meat and dairy. If you ever use that for meat and dairy, I don't think most of us do that. We'll probably have a salt shaker with holes on top, that's what we use, in which case it's not really relevant because the actual salt will never come into contact with any meat and dairy. Okay? The next thing we need to speak about, and we'll do that as Rad Hashem tomorrow, is food used for one type, and that's what we spoke about earlier in our introduction. If you have meat, or if you have salads, for example, or challah that was used for a meaty meal, could you use that afterwards for a dairy meal or not? Okay, guys, let's leave it here for